Independent Senator Bernie Sanders has a new message for those who are trying to fight against Trump and oligarchy. Run for election, but forget about running as a Democrat. Here's what he told the New York Times. One of the aspects of this tour is to try to rally people to get engaged in the political process and run as independents outside of the Democratic Party. Now, understand this is way different than what Bernie Sanders was saying before, as we need to run, in the Democratic Party to try to take over that party and turn it into a party for the working class. Now he's like, that obviously ain't going to work. Okay, not going to work. So why don't we run outside of the party now? So now he said, there's a lot of great leadership all over this country at the grassroots level. We've got to bring that forward. And if we do that, we can defeat Trumpism and we can transform the political situation in America. Now, he also, of course, said something similar in an interview with Hassan Piker.
You've talked recently with the New York Times about what the future of the Democratic Party looks like and what maybe young enterprising individuals must do. And I believe I'm paraphrasing here, you said something along the lines of like running as an independent rather than utilizing the party.
For me, that's not a very radical concept because I am the longest serving independent in American congressional history, and I've always run as an independent. Look, I think the Democrats over the years deserve credit for the work they've done on women's rights, on gay rights, on civil rights in general, fighting bigotry. They deserve credit, and they've made progress. But I don't think anybody with a straight face can tell you that they've stood up for the working class of this country. And I think that's why so many working class people have drifted into the Republican Party, not because they believe in tax breaks for billionaires or they don't believe that climate change is real. It's they look at the Democrats and there's not much there. So what my view is people should think about running as they want, progressive independents, should run as progressive Democrats. But don't necessarily feel that you have to run within the Democratic Party. And I think as you may recall, in Nebraska, a fellow named Dan Osborne ran a really, really powerful campaign as an independent, running as a very proud trade unionist, running on economic issues, and he did extremely well, much better than anyone had anticipated. So that was my point, and I think it makes sense.
So let me just say that it's great to see Bernie Sanders speaking with someone like Hassan Piker. Okay, look, like him or not, Hassan Piker reaches a lot of people and does a really effective show. He does very effective messaging, and that's why there's a lot of people mad at Hassan Piker. Okay, but he reaches a lot of young people. He has a massive presence on Twitch, and so it makes sense for someone like Bernie Sanders to actually speak to him instead of talking to just the New York Times. Yes, he can do both, by the way, and that's what he did. But staying in, establishment legacy media is one of the problems that the Democrats have. Now, Bernie Sanders, independent, but he generally also had a similar problem where he would speak to not, just legacy media, but now seeing him speak to other media like Hassan, I think that is a great thing. Yes, speak to independent media. It doesn't just have to be independent lefty media, independent centrist media. It doesn't matter, right? If that exists. I'm sure it does. But speak to independent media. Get outside of that legacy media bubble. Okay, so now that said, do I agree with him on the substance of what he said? Yes, I do. I think that anybody who is leftist or progressive that has been paying attention since 2016 or 2020 knows that currently, the Democratic Party is where progressivism goes to die. Now, I don't like that. I wanted for so long for that to change. Okay, but right now you have a situation where where progressives cannot just can't get through a Democratic primary. Okay, they just can't. Even though in many polls, progressive policies do extremely well with the wide range of the electorate. You have so many institutional roadblocks that are preventing progressives from being able to get through those primaries. You've got APAC spending, you have DFA spending, you have these large donors, you have Democratic leadership that puts roadblocks in front of progressives. That's one of the problems here. Okay. So now, of course, the Democratic leadership has also fought very, very hard to stop progressives, to stop people from the left. They fight harder against the left than they do against Republicans, against Donald Trump. And their fighting against Donald Trump has been extremely ineffective. In fact, there really isn't much of a fighter here. Chuck Schumer, not really a fighter. Hakeem Jeffries, not really a fighter. I gotta say that even though I have some issues with Nancy Pelosi, even Nancy Pelosi is showing a little bit more fight than Hakeem Jeffries. In fact, she's went after Schumer, and she's like, hey, look, if I were going to do a deal, I would at least get something from it. Like, from Nancy Pelosi? Whew. That is some harsh criticism from Nancy. Right into it's shiving his back. Okay? Shiving Schumer's back. All right. So now, again, the problem with the Democratic leadership right now is that they've been rolling over to Republicans. And I think there are a lot of Democratic voters who have started to realize that. They're going to town halls and they're ripping into the Democrats. They're ripping into Republicans, obviously. They're mad. They're calling their representatives so much that the representatives are like, why are people calling us so much? We're not the ones in charge here. You should be calling Republicans. What? Why should we be calling Republicans when you're our representatives? You're supposed to represent us, and yet we want you to fight, and you're not fighting. Okay? So, no, I think we're doing the right thing in calling you. Making sure that maybe you do what we want you to do. Okay? But look, the Democratic Party has a 29% approval rating. And that's because they keep telling the voters, well, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Well, we have no leverage. You have no leverage because you keep giving away your leverage. Okay? They can be an opposition party if they choose to be, but instead, they have given away what little leverage that they actually have. Okay? They're not filibustering these CRs. Okay? And they're saying things like, one day, the fever will break. And you know what? When that happens, we will have a strong Republican Party again because we want a strong Republican Party. No, I don't want a strong Republican Party. By the way, this Republican Party, as of right now, it's the strongest they've been in a very, very long time. They currently run the Supreme Court. They have both houses of Congress. They have the White House. They've never been in a better position. They are dominating with white men, with working class Americans. They have made serious gains with Latinos and Gen Z, specifically men. They're using that advantage to completely undo as much progress as they can on things like workers' rights, things like women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, climate change, you name it, regulation. This is a full frontal assault on all progress made in probably the last 100 years. And currently the Democratic Party is not fighting. They're not interested. They're like, well, we bipartisan solutions, everybody. So unfortunately, as a result of that, yes, it makes sense to work outside of the Democratic Party. Okay, that is a viable option now. It is, unless the party, of course, realigns. They kick out all the corporate influence, and they start actually representing workers again. Then, okay, now we're cooking with gas, okay? Yes, we'll go back into the party, and we'll do that. But not before then, okay? In fact, Sanders said, if there is any hope for the Democratic Party, it is that they're going to have to reach out, open the doors, and let working class people in. Let working class leadership come into the party. If not, people will be running as independents, I think, all over this country. 100%. Look, if you are angry at Bernie Sanders promoting this, just remember, y'all didn't want him in the, or progressives in the Democratic Party in the first place. Okay? You wanted the status quo. You wanted the big corporate donors. And you wanted the establishment. You ran establishment in 2 out of the 3 recent elections. And by the way, Biden only won, Trump only lost in that election because of COVID. We tried to warn you that, hey, if you keep going in the status quo direction, you're going to get us Donald Trump. And that's exactly what happened. I know it sounds like I'm going on a big I told you so rant, but understand this is to get people to realize that we can no longer do things the way that we were doing it before. The Clinton playbook of triangulation and running as a Republican light is not going to work. It's just not going to work. The Obama coalition, by the way, built on hope and change. It's not going to work unless there is real change. Donald Trump is bad, is not going to work unless you have a real concrete plan to fight against him. So, again, I think what Bernie Sanders is doing, along with AOC, who's now traveling around with him. Now, AOC is interesting because she's now being seen by voters as a leader in the Democratic Party. She is not in a leadership position, okay? She's not in leadership. In fact, Democratic leadership has tried to block her from leadership positions. Most recently, running the House Oversight Committee. Instead of allowing her to be in that position, hold oversight, they gave it to Jerry Connolly, a 70-plus-year-old cancer patient. So she doesn't have a leadership position, but now, because she's out there speaking out, and because she is being aggressive, as well as progressive, people are looking to her, Democrats are looking to her, and saying, that's the kind of leader we need. That's the kind of person we want. Because she is out there, she is fighting for us. And Tim Walz, by the way, Tim Walz is also out there. Tim Walz is fighting. He's speaking to people. He's going to these Republican districts, and he's listening. And he's saying, look, this is where we messed up. We needed to listen more, but we also needed to articulate a progressive position, okay? We needed to make a progressive case. We didn't do that during this election. And now the Democrats should. He's talking about how the Democrats need to do universal health care. And so, yes, I would say that he is also a leader in the party. Those two are the leadership that Democrats need. But until the party changes to reflect that, to really embrace progressive working class people as their future, I think the only real way to move forward is to run as an independent, to leave that party behind until they decide to change. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.